I hope you can hear me. So we're good. I'm going to speak a little louder. That way you'll hear me. So good afternoon, everyone. Before I start, I'd like to thank the organizers of this wonderful day, the SERAFIN. I'm thinking of Sébastien Descours, Pacret, Françoise Lefebvre, and many others. And also thanks the institution of the CESE to let me have exchanges here, which are both rich on a topic of great interest and that is sensitive and critical in the energy renewal. And there are many measures that involve the state. Are the slides going? Here we go. I represent DHUP, the management, urban management and landscapes. It's the FE management. I'm going to, not give you too many acronyms. So these are FE1 financing, which is in charge of managing and helping evolve everything having to do with the private and social housing. And this is devoted specifically to covering the remaining amounts to be paid for energy renovation of the private housing sector. So we're going to talk about the zero euro rate of, and the energy fund for energy renewal. And we're going to be able to have the luxury of adding to this, to make it clear to you, to go over the changes in 24, those that were voted on by finance and that are already in force, and those that are going to happen before the end of the year, that are perfectly consistent with the first. Now, public policy in the government about this topic is based on a strategy, the low carbon national strategy, the SNBC, and that they are very committed to in reducing considerably greenhouse gas emissions in many sectors, particularly in the building sector, and notably the residential, private residential park. We have an objective for them, is to, by 2050, we want to update this park of buildings. This has been developed by the SGPE, the General Secretariat in the Planification for the Ecology, which was supported by an action plan in this very area. Now, there are two milestones to this. The first is 2030, which is a reduction of 55% of greenhouse gas emissions on the European level compared to the level of 1990. And the second will be 2050, and that would be the carbon. And for the building sector, this is translated by an objective that is very ambitious, mixed minus 61% emissions compared to the level of 2019. So this is a really high bar, which necessarily demonstrates a huge investment in any case. I'm going to try and get this slide up. Public policy of the government are in a context, as Sarah was mentioning, there are many players involved, each in their own area of specialty. Energy renovation, all are concerned in this, the designers and deciders, the ministry, the ministry's cabinets, and those that are producing financial aid, and operators. France Rénov', which is under the ENA, GSF Gas is managing social guarantee to the social network between the government and banking establishments that are distributing these preferred loans. So we're talking about my Rénov' companies. We have the RGE certified artisans, and lastly, the funders, local collectivity, and banking establishments. So the major fact is creating public service. French Renault, that let's group together all of these players and to create career paths that are easy to manage. So one of the main factors, or in fact the most important factor to succeed in this energy project, the government is actively leading the thought process to cover the amounts remaining to be paid after support. So, and to pre-regulate so that we can target the right public and to commit with respect to banking establishments in this respect. So this is something new that's coming out of this. This is a complementary to the existing measures between different players. So, if now we get back to the changes that were made in the finance law in the recent decrees that were published in the last few weeks. Already. Is it time?
So, at this scale, the state has provided a number of subsidies, like MaPrimeRénov', that was launched into 2020. It is the flagship mechanism for renovation, and it has funded some 500,000+ renovation process, and it's a whole process that is supported and followed up, monitored, and it's possible for all types of households and helps decarbonating the heating system and improving the insulation of their houses. So when you see the slides, it's important to understand that it's important to combine the two approaches to achieve the climate objectives that I quoted before, and reducing the GHG effect. And there can be some one-shot changes, like recently simplifications, to maintain the production dynamics of these subsidies for the households. For instance, from the 15th of May until the end of the year, it's you don't need to wait until the end of the DPE process to activate the MaPrimeRénov' mechanism. And there's also the possibility of in your file to register your sale promise if you are selling the house. So this is for the subsidies. In parallel, there are some regulated loans. Before telling you about the zero rate loans, there was an important report, an assessment report about the experience conducted with third-party funding operations. This experience was planned under the Finance Law 2020 and completed in December last. And it showed very positive results that inspired a number of developments for the next finance law. I suppose you know this. The third-party financing company, as they do both financing and technical advising for the projects, make it possible to have self-funded projects. So on the right-hand side of the slide, this is an example of a project in the Hauts-de-France region, where you see the refunding of the zero rate, 0% loan corresponds to it's like it breaks even in a way, and provides at the same time very good living comfort. For the talking about the Eco PTZ, which is the flagship mechanism that was created in 2019, so there have been several simplification attempts to speed up or reboost this system, and it was done successfully, as we've been able to reactivate this between 2018 and 2023. We timed these loans by 6. But even better, the fact that we produce more of these zero interest loans, we end up smoothing out the cost of the average cost of these loans over the total. There have been simplifications also to the coupling with MaPrimeRénov', launched in 2022. We revalued the amount and ceiling of the subsidies to 50,000 euros versus 30 or 20,000 earlier. And the way it works, I'll tell you more about it in a few minutes. After the experimentation I just mentioned, all the third-party funding companies can also sell the PTZ, the Eco PTZ. So for the first renovations, you could do one-shot repairs, and after a while, you could fund the renovation of the rest. And as I will tell you in a few minutes, we have a new measure that makes the zero interest eco loan. We use the date of signing for the tax credit and not the issue date, because the timing of renovation for co-ownership or condominium config setups is much longer. If a household does not or cannot take an eco loan because there's periodical refunds, it's possible to take a renovation advance loan to avoid the repayment by installments and wait until you've completed the whole journey. So in parallel with this, we have a zero interest PAR, that is the via the new finance law 2024. We've also prepared a new set of laws for this. And getting back on the broad lines of this 0% PR, the maximum loan is 50,000 euros, and zero interest offer for the first 10 years, beyond which the interest rate, which is set between the borrower and the bank, becomes applicable, whatever has been agreed upon. It will be opened to a low and very low income household, and the conventional PARs are open to all categories, whereas the zero interest is for the poorest. And it will be also eligible for what they call the FGRE, that is the guarantee fund to secure the loans. This dates back to a law for green growth, energy transition, to secure the loans because for low-income households, the risk is higher. Therefore, in the case of an individual loan, the FGRE will cover 75% of the amount that is at stake. That's for individual loans. But for collective loans, it's like a counter guarantee and covers 50% of the amount at risk. To summarize, we have a direct subsidy, we have a repayment mechanism, we have two other mechanisms for refunded at the end of the process, and this securing loan securing system, FGRE. And the last thing about this guarantee fund, we will by the end of the first semester, we'll make sure that intermediary and higher income households may be covered by this system. If this was for the developments that have been already agreed upon for 2024, but others are in the pipeline, and to understand them, you need to understand the scope of the user's journey. If you do one-shot repairs, renovation, you have several options. If you ask for different subsidies to be coupled, you are given a letter saying, Mr. or Mr. Robert, you are entitled to that much of subsidy, which means you remain with, say, 5,000 euros to pay out of your own pocket. You use this certificate to your bank, for your bank, so that they will consider this as a third party, trusted third party, and use this to deliver their loan. So at the end of the day, you have an eco-PTZ of 50,000 euros max, which covers all types of one-shot repairs, renovations. Now, the right-hand side of the slide, you will, in this case, you ask for an eco loan, conventional one, 30,000, and then you give to the bank all the documents, including the form, the quotes, the invoices, etc. A whole pack of documents. So this type of coupling is much more convenient for the user, for the households, thus not having to submit the documents twice, and makes it easier also for the bank to grant the loan. Now, if you're going for a larger scale renovation, then what you are doing is you will have an audit of the whole housing, if it's an individual house or a flat, depending. So, same system, except that MaPrimeRénov' is the accompanied journey. And you have the same 50,000 euros, which should cover about 100% of your work. But you could opt for global performance eco-PTZ, but for this you need to send the energy audit plus the quotes and the invoices of the contractors. Now, renovation of a co-ownership of condominium. You have some condominiums with pavilions, for instance, then they will do the renovation at their own scale. But if you have a condominium as collective housing, the organization in charge of this will commission an audit for the whole building to achieve at least 35% of energy savings. Three options. Either the co-owners undertake or take an individual eco loan to pay whatever share of the work they have to pay for, or it's a collective loan. Same system. Like if they couple the two mechanisms, it's possible with the eco PDZ, or else it's a traditional co-ownership loan. So basically, it's a package of measures that will be enshrined and soon. And so there's both the individual approach, and if it's co-ownership, it's 35% covered. The last slide, in summary, 3 points. First, to say that these various developments are conducted jointly with the banks, with all the banks who grant these loans. They send us their feedback for any evolutions of the system, like calculation of the tax. It's a technical point that was submitted by the banks. Second point, we want to make all these mechanisms more visible. So that's why we have the one-stop shop for this, and we have also some professionals that help us in this regard. All these mechanisms make it possible to speed up the energy renovation, to have more and more of these projects underway in France to reach the climate goals, but also to massify, to do more work in one renovation project, to do more work and achieve more performance, energy performance, and therefore reap all the benefits of the energy renovation, retrofit benefits we mentioned earlier. So I think I'm done with my presentation. I don't know if it was clear enough, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Good afternoon. Yeah, thank you for this presentation. I had first question, simple. The impact study, this will be circulated in the next few days. And my second question, you spoke about the tax credit, and as the interest rates have gone up, this system is more expensive for the state now and more attractive at the same time. My question is about the trajectory of all this, because you have this eco PTZ now, and is it sustainable for the public finance if is this policy sustainable if the renovation policy works, proves to be viable? So just in order to think of potentially other mechanisms, about the question, which is very interesting, you need to understand that the interest rates, they can fluctuate. They were stable for several years before rising for reasons we are all aware of. And the purpose of the state as the public authority is to ensure the sustainability of all the measures that are put in place until 2028 in that particular case. So I think we have some 300 million tax spent in the next year. So it's a spend, I mean, for this. But it's also important for the bank organization to release this capital because the cost would be much higher if it was the state forking these amounts directly. On top of the subsidies, I mean. And so there would certainly be a problem of public finance in that case. Good afternoon. It was when you presented a number of financiers, you mentioned Lana and other. I didn't see any mention of the private donors, foundations, NGOs, etc. But from the latest numbers I have seen in my work, the contribution for the remains to be paid by the individuals can go up to 20%. So for this MaPrimeRénov' system, it's planned that and Lana will look at the spend of both the private and public loans to look at the makeup of any funding. I had a question about the collective eco. PT said, did you take into account the tertiary and sector for, if you have, for instance, a mix with housing in one building, but also stores at the ground floor? For that question, a few years back, we would apply a threshold to define collective building. We require that 75% of the space for should be main residence. We've suppressed, cancelled out this threshold, so we apply the rule of Alana. So the threshold would be, if it's over 20 batches, 75%. So you can still renovate a building in its whole, even if there's a store on the ground floor. To cover the whole building. There seems to be another question here. Two little questions. The first one about collective loans. There's a problem with the eligibility for commercial companies that have lots of flats in a housing block. So I would like to know if it's possible or considered that some thought be given to the possibility of these homes held by commercial companies to enjoy the zero interest rate loans. And there's also, I know for co-ownerships it's difficult to mobilize loans for homeowners. So I would like to know whether there's any possibility to simplify the administrative formalities for individuals and for co-owners, and also because I understand that the implementation and structuring of this system is quite complex for the banks, so perhaps it is needed to work on the structuring by the bank. About your first question concerning commercial companies that own homes. Zero interest loans are granted to individual person and certain real estate companies that are not subject to income tax. And the same rule applies for co-ownerships for those companies that are like syndicates of owners. The second question about the viager loan, that is, you pay until the owner is deceased. You can use for all types of spend. It's quite free and it's set up, but for energy renovation, in fact, the bank is invited to turn to the zero interest rate PAR, which is only dedicated to, specifically dedicated to energy renovation. About the simplification, well, we are going to start this zero rate PAR. It's only eligible for physical owners, private persons, that is. That's the status for the time being. Does that address your questions? Perhaps the last, very last question. Fabrice Dantec from Crédit Mutuel Arkea. I understand that there are some incompatibilities between the acquisition éco-purchases and MaPrimeRénov' accompagné. So are there any thoughts about addressing this point? On this question, there are some regulatory evolutions that will take place soon, a decree that will handle this. It's not possible for the time being to combine the two mechanisms for the same quality of work. So we'll see what is possible to be done, and then we can talk about it later. But at this point in time, there's nothing more I can say. There was the last question, perhaps? Florence Bresson. In charge of coordination of the renovation, energy renovation part. We are often are dealing with three major cases. First, it's a case of a house who share the house in SC mode. So is the MaPrimeRénov' possible in this case? We have another case, a house that had been divided, where you have a main entrance and then there could be, say, 2 or 3 flats. We never know. It is to be considered as a co-ownership, condominium, or an individual house, because some operators refuse to take this setup into account. Or you have the case of a house where the household have decided to rent out like a room or a part of the house to make ends meet. So are they entitled for the zero interest rate, or will the subsidies, say, be granted based on the total surface area minus whatever part is rented out, for instance? Thank you for all 3 questions. I will try to take all 3, but again, these are quite technical. But the first question about a house that is held by an SC co-system, it's a bit complicated. I've said that it is possible to mobilize an eco-pedicit when you are an SCI, But for the company journey, I think it's not possible. I can't say much more on this point. It's a very technical point. About the second question, that is a house that is divided into several flats. MaPrimeRénov' is for the individual loan. It's a housing unit. So if you have a house that is divided, in fact, the subsidies is granted to the owner of the house as a whole. If it is divided for gracious purposes, then it's a whole house that has to be renovated. Now, if it's a syndicate of co-owners, then you can use the MaPrimeRénov' copropriété for co-owners. The third question, a house where you would be renting out one room, say if the whole house belongs to the owner, there's only one owner, this owner can use MaPrimeRénov' and the Eco-Petits aides. I think it's a bit of a technical question. We can talk about it separately because there could be different aspects to be taken into account. And I'll try to be sure to cover all the cases. Thank you.